There are many legends known in our world today that have been revealed to be nothing but myth when looked at through the view of our advancements as humans. Modern technology and the use of electricity illuminating our towns and villages have pushed away the dark, revealing our fears of the unknown as nothing more than our imagination, and sometimes our collective hysteria playing tricks on us. But what happens when those primal fears begin to stir inside of us when confronted with the unexplainable, something that shreds all logic and understanding? One such phenomenon are the accounts of supposed sightings of skinwalkers. In Navajo folklore, the skinwalker, or Yee Naaldlooshii, translated to mean, with it, he goes on all fours, are said to be evil witches with the power to turn into animals and even possess the bodies of other people by mimicking how they sound or how they look. Though, unlike the poor soul who becomes a werewolf by being bitten or scratched or cursed, those who become a skinwalker have desired such and have acquired it through supernatural means, either by breaking cultural taboos, seduction, murder, or corruption. The skinwalker is usually a high-ranking priest or practitioner of medicine with supernatural abilities. Although a skinwalker can transform into any animal they wish, they more often than not transform into a coyote, wolf, cougar, fox, owl, or crow. The pelts of these animals are sometimes widely restricted among the Navajo, and skinwalkers are rarely discussed, as even the mention of them can attract them to you. So today we will be reading of 7 terrifying encounters of those who have come face to face with evil and have lived to tell us their story. Number 1. Yee Naaldlooshii is watching me. My grandmother on my mother's side has always been very superstitious, for lack of a better word. She's not religious, but she does believe in a lot of paranormal stuff. Her mother was full-blooded Navajo, and her father was Irish. Either way, she'd never been anywhere east of Montana, and she grew up in Nevada. One year when I was in grade school, we went to visit her. Most of the visit was pretty uneventful, typical boring old people stuff, except she always kept her curtains drawn shut, and would always peek out the window, and when someone asked what she was doing, she would simply reply, "Yee Naaldlooshii is watching me." This went on for nearly the entire visit until a few days before we were due to leave. My grandmother and baby brother, who's 19 now, were in the front yard that evening, planting flowers when all of a sudden, my grandmother starts shouting. She shouted for my little brother to get away from a creature that was outside. She kept saying it wasn't safe. Of course, being in Nevada, we all assumed that my brother had found a scorpion or a rattlesnake, so we all run outside, only to see my grandmother clutching my little brother and shaking in terror against the side of the house. Standing out in the yard was a large black Great Dane-sized dog. It was staring at my grandmother with an intensity I've never seen before. It looked up at us, gave a little huff, and bounded off. I don't remember if it moved unusually fast or not, but do remember it had really deep yellow eyes. When my mother asked my grandmother what had happened, she kept repeating, "The Yee Naaldlooshii has found me." She moved a couple weeks after that. Number 2. On the res, alone at night. My uncle and cousin saw a large deer on the side of the road. When they got closer, it hopped over the fence like a bipedal man. One time driving back from Gallup, my dad saw an old Navajo woman walking on the side of the road, and when he slowed to offer her a ride, she took off into the plains, quickly with inhuman speed. Once when I was a kid, my family was at my aunt's house, which is in a rural, secluded area, when we were toyed with by a few entities. They would make animal noises, and when we looked to the direction from which the noises were coming, they would turn a flashlight on and off. The noises would come from all directions, in increasingly shorter succession. Usually when I'm there, on the reservation, visiting, alone at night, I will feel the presence of evil and dread. Panic and paranoia will wash over me, and as sudden as it comes, it will leave. Number 3. It moved like a toy rocking horse. My uncle is Mexican and Native American. This happened in the Mojave Desert in Southern California. He was driving around with his girlfriend late at night, and they saw something that looked like a huge black dog on the side of the road. He slowed down, and the dog began crossing the road. Instead of walking like a normal dog would, this thing moved like a toy rocking horse. He said it stopped in the middle of the road and stared right at them, and its eyes had a red glow. My uncle is the most badass person I know, and it scared the crap out of him. Number 4. They ran away on their back legs. So this happened about 12 years ago. My family owns a farm in the heart of an Indian reservation. One winter I was home for Christmas taking care of the farm while my parents were away Christmas shopping. As I was home by myself way late in the night, I could hear all of our cows freaking out. I knew it had to be the wild dogs that are rampant in the area. So I threw on some boots, grabbed a shotgun, put some shells in it, and headed out into the field. This was a perfect scenario for a horror movie. It was cloudy, but there was a full moon, and it was breaking through the clouds just right to light up all the snow. I ran out into the middle of the field, and just in time, I thought, as I saw 2 dogs. Only, they were standing up and facing each other. They were fighting. I thought, perfect, 2 for 1. So I pumped the shell into the chamber of my 12 gauge, and then it happened. The 2 dogs heard the rack. They both stopped, looked over at me, and ran away, on their back legs. Immediately I froze, and every ghost story about Skinwalkers and all the other native legends I grew up with flew through my mind. Keep in mind, I'm a white guy, and up until then, these were all just boogeyman stories the native kids would tell to scare us. That night, however, they became real. Number 5. It had a dog's body, but with human hands and feet. I was spending a month with my cousins at my grandma's house. It was August, and my cousins' ages ranged from 10 to 15, and I was the oldest, being 15. We stayed up telling scary stories often. But one night, a few weeks in, we decided to make a campfire out back. My grandma's house is in a rural suburb. The neighbors aren't too far when you're driving down the road to her house. But in the backyard, it's thick forest with man-made paths throughout. Each house is on a hill, so only part of the basement was actually underground. That isn't important until later though. So we're facing the east side of her yard, in a smallish patch of open land. You couldn't see the neighbors' yards from there, and there were probably 3 miles to each side of us that belonged to my grandma. It was maybe 11 at night, and we were playing truth or dare after telling scary stories, and my 14-year-old cousin dared me and my 13-year-old cousin to go walk through the paths for 10 minutes or so. I said yes right away, as I wasn't easily scared and rather level-headed, but my younger cousin was a bit more hesitant. We didn't bring a flashlight because it wasn't pitch dark yet, and we could see enough to not die. We were walking through the paths for about 5 minutes, and could barely see the fire through the trees when we decided to turn. In the middle of the path was a large dog-like creature, hunched over with its front hands an inch from the ground. What I remember most was how its eyes were so bright white, and it was humanoid dog-shaped with a human-like head, but a dog-like body, but human hands and feet. It looked right at us, and I know I was paralyzed with fear as it dashed away the opposite way from us, towards a creek that ran through the yard. Eventually, my cousin and I screamed bloody murder, and the other cousins and my grandma ran to us. I don't remember much here because I was really disoriented, and I couldn't think properly, but I did wake up in bed, so I assumed that I was brought to the house. All the kids slept in the basement, in a big room with sliding glass doors to the outside, as the room was on the side that wasn't underground. My bed was pressed against a big glass window, and I could see my cousins playing outside down below. The house is in Michigan, so it gets slightly chilly even in the end of August, and there was a slight breeze, so I put on a jacket and ran to join them outside, skipping breakfast, not wanting to miss out on anything fun. When I got down, I could tell they weren't playing, but rather running to get my grandma. Her dogs, both of them, were dead, ripped up. That night we went to bed early. I woke up at maybe 2 in the morning because I felt something hit my head, My cousins were all sitting on the double bed opposite me, on the other side of the room. There was one bunk bed and 2 double beds. The double bed was for me and my 14-year-old cousin. They were being quiet and staring at me. The 13-year-old nodded his head toward the window. I froze. They all looked afraid. I turned my head slightly to the side, and I saw a really messed up looking face pressed to the window with gaping eyes, looking right down at me. I screamed so loud, and it ran. My grandma called the police after I told her what happened. They found nothing. I went home after that, and I have never been there during the night again. Number 6. It was neither fully human nor fully animal. In July 2004, near Gallup, New Mexico, I had my first and only encounter with a Skinwalker. Before this, I used to say, "I'll believe it when I see it." Well, I'm a believer now. What I saw was not fully human, nor fully animal. I was moving and had just completed the cleaning with my 10-year-old son. We had called it a night and were heading back to our new place. As we walked out the front door, I saw a figure move from behind my neighbor's car to a nearby tree that stood between our apartments. It didn't have red glowing eyes, snarling teeth, or a rotten smell. It did move quickly, but not quick enough to avoid the light from a nearby light post and porch lights. It didn't look at me or come towards me. It moved as if it was trying to avoid being seen. I was within 15 feet of it, but I did not look back to fully inspect it. What I saw was a wolf-like animal that sort of resembled the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, just not cartoonish. It had brown fur that completely covered it. It wasn't a pelt. It was a very large wolf. It didn't have any human traits, except that it walked on its hind legs. It cowered behind the tree as we got into our vehicle. When we got in, I asked my son, "Did you see that?" Thankfully, he hadn't. My brother-in-law insists that it wasn't a Skinwalker because I would have never seen it. To this day, I can picture what it looked like. I know that they exist, and I pray I never encounter one again. Number 7. The Grove. This didn't happen to me, but a very close friend of mine. I've heard a lot about coyotes and skinwalkers, and had a weird experience or two with coyotes. Creepiest was waking up to my sleeping bag being surrounded in paw prints without ever hearing them during the night, but never anything paranormal, so to speak. Patrick's story, however, kept me from going back to a favorite backcountry secret stash. He was leaving the area one morning, had been camping there a couple days, and said that there was a coyote that always seemed to be close by, like in his peripheral vision, but never overt. He loaded his truck and started to drive down the washout to the fire road. At the end of the wash, he could see the coyote following him. When he pulled onto the road, it was running next to him. Now he was freaked out, so he sped up. He said that he was going 35 or so, and it was running alongside him. Definitely not possible. When he looked back, the coyote was running on 2 legs, and it was wearing what Patrick said looked like buckskin pants. An instant later, it was a person wearing a coyote fur keeping pace with his truck. When he looked again, it was gone. We never went back to the grove after that. Hey guys, Extremo here. It probably wasn't wise to record this video, especially since I'm going camping soon. But skinwalkers have always been something that I've been super interested in, and I was super excited to finally make a video about them, which was definitely fun reading into like the folklore of it all. But I hope you guys have just about as much fun watching it, and if you guys have ever had any creepy encounters yourself, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I do have a few projects and ideas about things I want to get into, maybe some deep dives and some other stuff. So please feel free to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you don't miss out on those. I'm also on all the socials too, so, you know. check that out. But with all that being said, hope to see you on the next one. I love all you guys, and thanks for watching.